It's the woman's PUA.
Yeah, woman's PUA, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alexandra got me.
That's it.
She's playing by the rules.
Yeah, because I do so much of that.
By the rules.
Yeah. They need to put out in terms of display, like keep showing me you're into me.
It has to be displayed.
That makes sense.
But I'm not going to reciprocate.
Yeah. New levels to David being unearthed every day.
Who's the big player, man? Come on.
Who's the baddest of them all?
The big hormone enneagram.
I'm John Lekovich, 415, sexual self-pres, 458 trifix.
I'm David Gray, self-pres sexual, 9 with 1 wing, 974 trifix.
What up? It's Emeka. I'm an 8-wing 7, sexual self-pres with 854 fixes.
Hi, I'm Alexandra. I'm a social self-preservation 9-wing 1, 963 trifix.
Like and subscribe on Apple and Spotify, and leave us a review. If you want to support the show with a donation, you can find us on Venmo at Big Hormone and paypal.me/Big Hormone.
We watched movie yesterday, Bone Tomahawk.
That was good.
Oh, I
That's
love
brutal.
that movie.
Oh, you've seen it?
I've seen it about probably 10 times because I just love it so much. It's so fucking strange.
So brutal. Yeah.
So those
Thinking about
screams.
Yeah.
Yeah. That combination of cowboys and aliens. I mean, fuck yeah.
yeah, right.
Cannibalistic cave dweller aliens or whatever the fuck they were.
Yeah, that throat whistle thing.
Yeah. Oh,
man.
that's.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that all day, and then like the pregnant women with the eyes gouged out.
Yeah.
Dark Town.
Just beautiful.
Oh man.
Have you ever read The Road? Or I don't know if it's in the movie, but I read the book, and I remember when I read it, like
I love that author.
Yeah, he's great. And there's a part where it's about a father and son in a post-apocalyptic whatever. They're like find this abandoned house, and they're like going through it, and then they open, or maybe not abandoned house, and they open the basement, and it's like. There's the light is from behind them, and it illuminates a basement full of naked people who've like had body parts amputated for food.
Whoa!
Like, on old mattresses, and I remember just like that, like just stuck in my mind. It had that kind of that kind of just like absolute dark energy that we were talking about, like when prisons and stuff, just like that level of underneath things.
I think that author is an SPSX 9-wing 1. I think he's like a Bermuda, but SPSX 9-wing 1.
Yeah. We talked about after the movie. Just talked about prison underworld for a while. There's something really fascinating about just like the absolute hellhole of humanity and the things people do when there's nothing else to live for.
Right.
Rape stories.
The dialogue in that movie was great too. It was kind of strange, awkward. Like the Kurt Russell goes, "I'm gonna go make a survey" or something like that. Like I'm gonna go see, just
like a weird humor.
Yeah.
And I kind of liked. I kind of liked that it sort of blended an almost cliche, like gonna go save the woman from the bad guys.
Totally.
Kind of thing with this like nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Towards the beginning, when it's those two guys that are like bandits.
Oh yeah, right.
There's a sound in the distance, and the old guy's saying, "Don't worry about it." And David Arquette goes, "It's ominous."
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way the movie started was really, I was like, what a way to start a movie.
Yeah.
And the black character's on screen for 2 seconds, gets completely massacred.
I know.
Who was
I thought that was hilarious
because the black character.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that was hilarious. Like the writer did this on purpose. This is like a a meme that is. It's like black like character, 2 seconds.
The stable boy, yeah. And then just...
Oh yeah. Now I remember.
I thought that was hilarious. That was definitely done on purpose.
Yeah, to stick with the old timey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
TV trope. All right, y'all. It's been a couple weeks. Lots of updates. Lots of juicy bits.
Let me check on our food before we
bits.
dive.
Okay.
Have there been any more retypings, or
Yeah.
are you guys settled?
A little
Yeah.
bit. We talked about it today. Let me just wait for John.
Yeah.
You all humble farmers now? No, Emeka's not. Emeka
Well,
will never be a farmer.
I mean, I'm kind of like feeling embarrassed with. I'm like, do I
Aw,
really
I
have?
How much of a mess you are?
Well, I'm just like, am I really? So every day I'm like, are you really?
How are you surviving?
Are we for real? Like one zone's okay. 2 is like, dude.
That's a lot. You're intense. You're an intense dude.
Okay.
Impatient, actually, it seems. Like, quite impatient, maybe, with 1.
Yeah. Well, that's something to talk about.
Frustration-y.
Yeah, there's a lot there. There's a lot. Like, where do I begin? So a couple weeks ago, we were still at 3-1, and then what happened? I suppose in that time we realized David was 2-3, so we did a class on that, and then shortly after that we realized Joseph was 3-2, and
Sexual.
in sexual.
Yes.
Yeah, talking about sexual, and that kicked off a whole bunch of insights. I think the other
that led to him being retyping you 1-3.
Yeah, because he was realizing with himself that he's so fixated on the partner, and Joseph, when he starts dating, like he moves his boyfriend in relatively quickly. Like he's very, very
Yeah,
securing
does,
the partner focused, and I thought I'd like to think I was, but like my history says otherwise. Like in terms of the sliver of attraction's gone. I mean, it's more complicated than that. And
it
maybe
feels
what
like
I'm
you want to, but it has to get through the one chasm or whatever.
Yeah, but also it sounds flippant, but it does feel like there is call it like a ruthless observer in the background of not just the other person, but like the chemistry and the sort of organism of the chemistry between me and that person. And as you get to know someone, you realize like, oh, you're into that, or oh, you're not into that, or you don't respond in this way. And maybe over the course of 6 to 8 months or a year, you realize that the initial hit, which is only partial viewing of that person that got you so jazzed up, now that you're seeing the full organism, you're like, that's not as hot as I thought it was. And I don't think this is compelling enough for me to continue to get off to. And then, but if it is, then I'm stuck. Like, I'm basically falling in, lost to this person, which has only happened maybe a couple times in my life, like long term, not just like honeymoon stage. So it does seem flippant, but it's really, I don't want to make myself sound better than it is because it is flippant. But there is a little bit, but there's a little bit of a sensitivity to the organism, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. It feels like it could be because I don't experience you as as not wanting or not being interested in securing. It feels like, at least this has been my impression of you, it feels like you are interested in securing the thing, but it's like things don't quite get there. Something like that. Or you think it's there and then it just kind of falls apart or something like that.
Well, I want to admit that this one thing that I've realized like in the last 5 to 6 years is the first time that I've really thought about long-term, like I want to make a long-term relationship work. So there's that. And I'm also running to the wall of realizing that there's certain things about long-term relationship that inevitably kill the charge of what I'm looking for. Like the thing I was saying last time is like too much mutual understanding, too much familiarity. Like there has to be a significant amount of friction and distance in order for me to continuously feel that, oh, this is a compelling chemistry organism that we have. And so like if we, for example, cohabitation, living together, I feel like for me, because I'm still figuring this out, I think inherently I don't know if I can do that and still continue to feel that way about that.
And this also gets at the cohabitation as a comfort zone, kind of SP.
Right.
Right. So you do it sort of too easily or flippantly.
Yeah. That's one thing that Joseph pointed out with the play zones. That's one other thing that came out. The zones as play zones, secondary influences that you have sort of a flippant way that you think that you can do it. And so, like, for example, me and David can come off like maybe not in our different ways, like player love bombers. I'm not where it's like, oh, I'm gonna be with you forever. I'm not saying that I'm saying that, but the impression that we're gonna merge. We're gonna merge at zone 3, but then for different reasons, renege on that.
Renege on the deal.
Yep. You guys lure him in that way.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna make the joke, but to John's like 3-2 sexual. We're like, why would you? Don't ever play with that. If you're gonna say it, then do it.
Right. Yeah.
One of the things that Emeka that you said a couple times is this material's come up is like something along the lines of like, I didn't always know what I was asking for, or I didn't, basically it's like going to help you clarifying certain hard to pinpoint needs and things like that. And I'm kind of wondering for both of y'all, I would imagine, especially with the 1-3, it can be hard to actually nail down a long-term relationship, you know? And so I'm wondering if it's like orienting how you think about the kind of relationships you want, if you do still want a long-term relationship, or if you're like, oh, that's probably not gonna be sustainable for me, or like how it's making you see things new.
I spent a week just like rethinking, reevaluating my whole sexual history approach, and just kind of like trying to get realistic about like how what would actually work for me. And I think part of what I realized is it's kind of like how the world is an SPSO world, or social self-pres world. Like that's kind of the assumptions that we live by, and attachment. And so the conventional kind of conventions of relationship kind of default to, monogamy, cohabitation. Maybe we have kids together, we get married, and that's sort of like the most accepted path. And there are other types of relationship frameworks that could work better. And I mean, I don't necessarily have a lot of, I don't think I have a lot of need for monogamy. I mean, so that's something I need to look at. Is monogamy something that I require? Is cohabitation something that I care about? I'm leaning towards no. What type of partnership would work for me long term? Like in the past, I've noticed that generally it's when she has like her own world pulling her in a certain direction, and the only reason we're together or interested in each other is because of interest. Like there's not like, oh, we're doing this thing together, or we're obligated to see each other because of this reason. You're hitting me up because you want to see me. There's no other kind of enmeshment reason, and that's always felt pure to me. Like it felt like I'm only existing in your life out of a pull, and that's it. And so, yeah, it made me look back on all the things that have worked for me, and the things that I've kind of tried to, because I mean, most couples are just 3-2, and that's kind of like what everyone grows up with as an ideal. And I'm sort of realizing that I might have to look for an unconventional setup to have something that works.
I don't know if this is directly answering your question, John, but one thing that seems to make sense to me is that the play zone, so to speak, continues in the direction of that flow. So like with Emeka's, it is that SPSO. It's almost like domesticity, but mine is the other direction. So the thing I'm dangling out there is like SPSX-ish. It's like special charged love object or something, or something underworld. I don't know how to say it exactly. I don't have the words for it yet. But
you're saying kind of like goes from 2-3 to 3-1.
Yes, right.
Well, that's something that a couple insights about the whole thing that we've been doing. One, back to your question of the libido thing, we realized that for sexual, that one's sexual drive or libido is kind of an independent thing of these zones. And consummation doesn't necessarily mean like literal consummation in zone 3. It's about like merging. And so to separate that from these zones, but also we realized that initially we were thinking of like, trying to not look at these as the stackings within the stackings, but the more we look at them, that does seem to be panning out. Like the sin flow versus contra thing is really playing out in an interesting way. So like the sin flow stackings, for example, with sexual, each of those stackings are fixated on the one. Like 3-2 is merging with the one, and then 1-3 is sort of like the honeymoon sort of flame, alchemical flame into the one, and 2-1 is messy because each time they're getting with someone out of validation, they're parading that partner as this is the one. And then when you go to the contra zone stems, they're each doing something that feels somewhat subversive to that zone. Like 1-2 is really sort of impractical, hoisting up sexual charge independently on its own. Like for sexual, it's like Madonna in her book on sex, just like sexual promiscuity for its own sake. Yeah, just in the air. And then 2-3 is subversive in the sense that it's so fixated on winning the game that it creates that kind of distance from the other person.
Being like an imposing
figure,
romantic, desired one. Yeah.
And then when you get to 3-1, it's curling into itself like that fetish that only gets weirder because it needs to continually find charge inside. And so that's been an interesting one to look at, just realizing that 3-1 is a lot weirder and more autoerotic than we realized. And even just like looking at examples of people that we realized might have 3-1 in anything, and how weird.
Just generally unpleasant. Yeah, interesting. What was I going to say? So then 1-3, 3-2, and then 2-1. Are you calling that, because they're the sin flow stackings, are you calling those more object oriented?
They're more
singular to the person or something.
Okay.
Well, you could say that they're moving towards the needs of the zone. Like they're, you could say that the baseline for the sin flow zone stems is 3-2. Everything comes back to the baseline health. I want to, and fixate on the object in a healthy way. And all the other ones sort of are doing that. But the other ones are doing kind of like some kind of autoerotic or auto.
It's kind of like how we talked
like
about contraflow, like the secondary instinct in a way for all the contraflow stackings is more detrimental than the secondary instinct with the sin flow. You know, like with sexual, social is kind of, it's almost, you know, it's bringing, it's morals and it's, or, you know, social consciousness, and it's not consummation based as much, right? And then SPSX, SX is, you know, detrimental to self-pres. You know, it's erratic and mercurial and destructive, and what is it? Social self-pres. There's a wall between intimacy and friendship or whatever.
That's interesting. So it basically is like the sin flow stackings just generally being more personal, and the contra stackings being more
impersonal.
I was gonna say archetypal or something like that, like more of like a symbol than a personal object to engage with or something like that.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah, and even just seeing that in real people, that's been another clue to find some of these zone stems, because well, at least to me anyway, maybe because my regular stacking is sin flow, I've always had a hard time wrapping my head around what contra is doing, like why. And this is playing out in the zone stems as well, because I had a reaction to 2-3 and sexual. Like I don't understand, but I get it conceptually. I see what the purpose is, but it feels so like, you know, like against the grain. I mean, we found more. There's a video coming out this week, just looking at more subtle examples of that. But that sort of like game of, I don't know if you guys remember the rules from back in the 2000s or 90s. It was just a book about like how to snag a man and how to make a man fall in love with you, and it's all kind of like, don't respond to his text, don't call him back. If he suggests a date, say no. Just that kind of like playing hard to get and making him jump through hoops. I'm sure it works. It's the opposite of the sort of player style of
It's the
have a bunch
woman's
of girls.
PUA.
Yeah, woman's PUA basically.
Yeah.
Alexandra got me.
That's it.
She's playing by the
Yeah,
rules.
because I do so much of that.
by the rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She played real
I do
hard to
so-
get.
Yeah.
Yeah, he came to my apartment and I basically wouldn't let him leave.
Mhm.
Also kind of helped me understand like where do we all do this, kind of like all these zones. And when I thought of like why do people do bachelorette parties and bachelor parties right before they get married? Like it's like, well, this
Oh,
is your
interesting.
last like hoorah, like go out there and just as sexual, potentially promiscuity for its own sake. Or people talk about a hoe phase, or even just like the sexual revolution of the 60s, that sort of like explosion of sexual energy for its own sake. That has like a subversive kind of like,
Right.
this is not about a partner, this is just about pursuing pleasure.
Yeah.
Interesting.
For my bias, I'd always think about that stuff and be like, are these people really into the people that are, like that was
Yeah.
always like a thing, like a hang up I couldn't quite understand was like, whatever, people are like kind of like, most people are not attractive, so like what is going on there, and yeah, just thinking about it, it's not really about the partner
No.
in a way, it's about just the energy or something.
Right.
Yeah.
David or Joseph is like, I don't want to make it sound like this is just because I think he was feeling like this is looks like people that are fucked up in some way, and I'm like, well, that's kind of the point of self-pressed sexual. it's downward and it's gonna trigger your social, man. Like it's not.
How dare you?
There's no real healthy example of self-pressed sexual.
Yeah,
I
like-
mean,
We were talking about Marilyn Manson.
as a social 3-1.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Mm.
Was it
gross.
social? I thought it was.
Yeah, it's social.
Yeah.
He might have multiple instincts that are 3-1, but
Yeah.
social for
Might
sure.
even be sexual. 3-1.
But like every example that we look at for 3-1, it's kind of like that's the thing with zone 1 is if you're curling within yourself to find chars, like it's gonna have to get weirder in order for you to continue to, just like any addiction or any fetish that you might have, you can't keep getting, if you're watching porn or whatever, you'd have to kind of up the ante on the weirdness if you wanted to keep, So self-pressed sexual always has that inner
It's
weird
like condensing and
fecundity.
condensing and condensing to a finer and finer point or
Mhm.
something.
Interesting.
To where you're obscuring.
So-
It's kind of like the overlap of type 5, where
Right.
you get so far into the hyper idiosyncratic that you're just not even related to anything.
Yeah, that's that loose overlap of 5 then too.
I looked at the like FetLife, the website for people with kinks and fetishes. Some engineer started it because he couldn't find a website, and he wanted to keep it open for whatever fetishes that people were into. And then people started starting groups and forums around rape and other more extreme fetishes, and he wanted to keep that going. But the payment processor says, if you guys continue having forums for people to explore these kinds of fetishes, then we won't honor your payments. And so that he had to sort of ban it, and that was something that they didn't. But it's like that's kind of like whenever you go into the forbidden and the sort of
The hell realm.
underbelly, that it has to keep going that far.
Yeah, that's rough. So, did the 3-1 socials we know, are they not 3-1
longer.
socials anymore?
No longer.
Yeah, so
What is,
Joseph now
what
we
is
got
ours?
3-2, right?
So what?
Joseph 3-2 on
Yeah.
social.
Yeah, one thing that helped there is
Interesting.
beyond just separating the specificity of the type and the disagreeableness of the type from just the core instinctual framing. And for Joseph, like he is very sensitive to any indication of unhealth from a person, even if it's as simple as you have weird attitudes about certain types of people, and he doesn't want to get close to you. Like, so 3-2 is really focused on not just stability, but like health, the baseline. You know,
That's why he hangs out with you two upstanding
That's right.
gentlemen.
Right, yeah.
The healthiest.
The healthiest.
The healthiest. Okay, that does
Exemplars.
make sense. I guess that's also why Lewis rang the alarm on your guys' suicide hotline joke.
Right.
Great job there, guys.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm ready for another one of those.
that was a little bit of 3-1 there. I mean, I don't think they'd have. It's like a underbelly porn kind of thing. But yeah, we talked about that. They're Joseph and Lewis are social is probably just 3-2, not 3-1. They're not really doing any underbelly.
Friend farmers.
Mm-hmm.
Like our dear
Just
Emeka
really
here.
specific, and it went on. But
Yeah, and I guess they're still snobby image types too. You know,
Very
it's
snobby.
Still going to affect things.
That's part of what it was, is, you know, that full moon thing.
Yeah,
That we were-
interesting.
that's making us think.
I'm not-
full on.
Am I the same still?
same still.
I'm still a flaky bitch. Okay, great.
Yeah, so
Eternal.
it's coming together. Hopefully, just the more people we know that we can. It's getting easier to see people, but I think the last couple weeks, some pretty big realizations about this whole thing. But I think it's starting to pop. It's coming to become clearer, I would say.
Cool. Yeah, that contra versus synflow thing is really interesting. And it'll be interesting over time to kind of put it all together. Like, I have all the synflow stems, but I'm a contra.
Right.
I'm still contra, you know? Like,
Right,
what
right.
the fuck's up with that? So there's like I don't know, there's maybe like a distancing, repelling kind of thing that I'm doing up front. But then once you get past it, I'm like, actually, you know?
Right.
Sounds right. Yeah.
Something
Yeah.
like that.
Or like the people who are synflow who have a zone stem that's contra, like, you know, you're like, what are you doing, you know, in the social realm? Like, why are you displaying this sort of like kind of repulsive?
Yeah.
But no, yeah.
I'm kind of curious now. Just like, I feel like this sort of redefines basically like relationship models. You know, like, I imagine there's a lot of just like fucking miserable, lonely people because the template society has is one thing,
Mm-hmm.
but their social and sexual zones are somehow incompatible with that at large. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
you know, even though I'm a 3-2 sexual, just being a sexual type alone feels like very disjointed relationally from the way everybody else does stuff, which seems to be, you know, from my point of view, like, oh, nobody's really attracted to each other and they're just kind of like finding friends. So then you add, you know, having being like you being sexual type 1-3 zone, sexual, like that's even more like
That's weirder.
incongruent or something.
Yeah,
And so
right.
anyway, it's just
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah, like, you know, or with David, I still don't feel super clear on 2-3 in practice. Like, I get it conceptually.
With sexual specifically,
With
or
sexual, yeah. I sort of like, I don't quite get what the kind of like the outcome is in a certain way, like what you want, other than, you know, like, is 2-3, is it kind of like wanting multiple sources of affirmation, or is it like you want your partner to be giving you a lot of affirmation, or like where's it going?
Well, Emeka, do you have some notes on that one? Maybe.
Well,
Or- I have some stuff I'd say, but go ahead.
Well, I think at the base of it, it's zone 2 is about validation, and the thing that seems clear about 2-3 in the sexual zone is that this sort of idea of a formidable figure who is pulling the strings on the dynamic, which can show up different ways. So it can show up as
It's like social self-pres in sexual. In other words, like a lofty, formidable, untouchable, but popular, right? Wanted, but you can't have it, right? I'm a statue or something, or you know what I mean? Or just so I'm not going to be affected. You're the one who's going to be, you know, the other person's going to be affected, and they're actually going to go crazy for me. That's sort of like how that sort of how the 3-1, the SPSX piece is like, I don't know that I'm doing anything to make that happen, but obsession, like I want the person obsessed, right? And I'm not obsessed. So I win, I'm above, etc.
Thinking of the status of like how into you, who's into who more. That's 2-3.
One of my exes, the one that I mentioned in the first Love Line call, when somebody asked who would be my desert island partner, my ex, who was an SPSX 6-wing-7 613, I always used to describe this dynamic that we had where, like, I would leave, we'd have a big fight, I'd leave, and I wouldn't call her, right? And she wouldn't call me. And I always used to describe it as whoever called first was the loser. And she would always call, I would always hold out until she called. It was like, oh yeah, I won.
That's 2-3.
That's 2-3.
There,
That's so funny.
on Friday, there was an example I found that I thought was hilarious. A book said how to win the breakup.
Oh my God.
And I thought that was like the relationship is over,
it.
but like I want this person to be miserable and I want them to miss me for the rest of their lives.
That's it.
That's 2-3.
Interesting.
That's all I ask. Misery for the rest of your life.
Interesting, yeah. So it's like a chess match, just wherever, in whatever instinct it is, like Game of Thronesy kind of.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. Like, John, you got that with
instinct.
social. Like you're aware of like who the big players are and that sort of thing. Like just imagine that with the sexual instinct.
Yeah. Wow.
With another person.
New levels to David being unearthed every day.
Who's the big player, man? Come on.
Who's the baddest of them all?
That's the
so
one that
interesting.
triggers me the most, I would say, in terms of like, what are you doing with sexual? What are you doing?
No, for sure. That one upsets me the most too.
No, it does. It is bringing up certain, like, not memories, but like emotional things in my gut. Like I'm remembering of ways that I felt like played or hurt, because I was like,
right,
like, why are you playing a game?
Yeah,
with me?
or trying to make me
Why
feel
would
like
you
I
want-
was disposable, and
Yeah.
I was like, oh well, if you really like me, you want me, and we want,
Right.
like that's like how it goes. But it was like it was very confusing. Yeah, so I mean, like, with the outcome for 2-3, just kind of wanting a partner that sort of feels like they're in constant adoration of that of the 2-3 person.
I mean, one thing is there's a difference in when you're actually in love, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the general, so the taking away the being in love, whatever dynamic. Yeah, it's wanting to be known as, I don't know, just somebody to contend with as
Like
a
a power
competitive.
player, yeah.
What's that?
Like a power player.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you think about how social self-pres needs like the credentials or the prizes or the signifiers of status. And it's like the sort of like, here's a signifier of my love through something that I'm willing to do for you. Like, you're willing to go slay the dragon for the damsel in distress. The Prince Charming is willing to do that. Or you're willing to go through all these courtship displays that it's not even doing them, but like the willingness to do those things as a display of, look how much I'm willing to do for our love. And so it feels like, to me anyway, it feels like the person who's 2-3 is like this person on high that you have to kind of, I don't know, adore in some kind of way to show them. You have to externalize your love for them. It can't just be like, we have heat between us and that we're into each other. Like, it has to materialize in some kind of like status thing.
They need to put out in terms of display, like, keep showing me you're into me.
It has to be
Oh,
displayed.
that makes sense.
But I'm not going to reciprocate.
Yeah, but yeah, if you're not interested, I feel like the high side
Yeah.
of 2-3, or even like the hooking strategy of 2-3,
The hooking,
would
yeah.
be to make somebody feel really important, right?
Right.
To give that out, to make someone feel like they are their own sort of formidable figure, and I can't
Yeah.
believe and then slowly to get reinforced would be to kind of like pull that away.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're important because it's me. Right.
Of course, yeah, that's a
And
given.
I'm deigning to speak with them.
But it does help me understand, like, that whole situation at the zone, or stuff that I've seen with Dodi. Like, maybe it's conscious or unconscious, but like, what is the win here? But like the idea that there are multiple people in the room who are interested in me is getting at that sort of thing, that sort of like formidable statue, formidable figure who has relative to the others, has a lot of power.
Yeah. It sounds like it would work the same way the stackings do too, where like 2, which wants validation, because there will be the most neurosis around getting that validation. Okay, let's see, what was I going to say? It's because there's that much neurosis around getting validation, it may not have an accurate read on how much they're actually getting. You know what I mean? And so they need to like pump it up more and more and more.
Yeah.
So then 3-2 in sexual would be like, this needs to be like extra super, like maybe it has a blind spot to actually how secure it is. And so
Right.
needs to like reinforce it. And then same with 1, like
Right.
maybe a fear around
Not getting
is this
enough.
still hot. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, 100%. It's like the instincts, you can never get enough. And so I would imagine that's playing out. Like, this whole thing has just made me just rethink how, like, what's a bigger deal. And it feels like the zone stems, yeah, like like knowing that someone's social sexual isn't enough. Like,
Yeah.
the way they do their social, like, it really sticks out now that I can
Yeah.
see this. It's like it's like, it just seems like that's all I can see, because it's like it's a bigger deal than the stacking itself, in a sense.
I mean, and
Yeah.
you think of me and just all the ruckus I've thrown up in the air with social as 1-2, which is like just wanting to juice it just for the sake of it.
Just for the sake of it.
Yeah, and then with sexual, with the 2-3, just the combination is a pretty bad combination for any kind of stability. And
and there you go. Like, those are 2 contra stems.
That's it.
Which are kind of like autoerotic explosions.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
On
I
top
still
of
think
being
this
self-pressed
is-
sexual.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I think the zones within the instincts are gonna matter. Yeah, in certain ways more than, I don't know if they're gonna be more than the stacking actually. I think that
It's almost
zone-
leaning that way at the personal level.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine, yeah. But I'm thinking of like, I don't know. I still think that like that stem within the overall stacking is gonna be something like that dominant instinct followed by
Right.
sexual, still self-pres blind, prioritizes her own regulation last,
Mhm.
is still
Mhm.
a problem.
No, you're right. Like, I think the stacking is still the big sort of movement, but like, when you start to get granular in like certain situations, like maybe you're dealing with someone sexually in a relationship setting, then those kind of like conflicts start to play. I mean, it's all, they all play a part, but it is interesting to me, just well, I guess just being in a romantic situation, what pops out. But if there's conflicting zone stems, depending on
right.
how conflicting
big.
they are, then that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, it's bringing up a whole lot of stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I mean, I would like to eventually figure out a way to see this quickly. I hope like over the next few months, like we figure out a way to observe this without talking to people. That would be pretty cool.
Oh yeah, okay. I'm sure that there are like specific questions. The trouble with all of this though, and just knowing how attachment works too, is that people will figure out the right answers to give and then that'll throw things off. But maybe there are like subtle enough questions that will be tells you know, for
Mhm.
people's zones.
Yeah.
Um,
One interesting angle that you brought up, John, is just what is it, the significance of the last zone and missing a last zone. There are even some questions about like when you go to that zone, does that mean that you're like, for example, David, or like when you go to sexual, does that
social,
mean that or well, no, I mean like for your sexual 2-3, when you go to your last zone of zone 1, is it like in the style of 1-2 or just like integrating the last zone? What does that mean? That's something I've been thinking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it is 1-2-ish.
Mm-hmm.
It's like sky drama,
Mm-hmm.
archetypal.
what is
Yeah.
sky drama? Sorry, I missed that bit.
How I do, if I go to zone 1 in sexual, since I'm 2-3, then what
Oh,
does
I
it
see.
look like? And I think it
Mhm.
is 1-2. And that's a part of my thing with sexual social women.
Oh,
You see?
that's interesting.
Yeah. It feels archetypal, like mythological.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You think it just goes into the flow, like with the 3-2 going
Could
to
be.
1B1-3?
Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose I do a display of the sort of devoted 3-2 boyfriend who's merged with you
God.
and
Don't sound
cares-
more grossed out, you know? Try to cover that up a little bit.
who cares about all your problems, and
You literally
your
had
dreams.
you literally had a grimace while you were saying that. I guess I play the role of a devoted
Yeah.
boyfriend.
Who cares how your crops grow?
cares about you.
We're talking sexual still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
sexual.
because I can see that with like you get like very
You do
I'll
get
cook for
very
you
dad,
and all
you
this
know?
kind of yeah.
Yeah.
And then I leave.
I'll be a baby daddy.
Well, so what about you guys with 3-2 doing like?
Oh, they do the 2-1. Look at my new
2-1.
relationship. Everyone, look.
Yeah.
They're
It's like, yeah. Here we are.
1,000 photos of my
And
relationship.
it's celebratory.
Oh,
You know
John
what
and
I mean?
I. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Look at us. Haha, isn't this great? You guys don't have this.
We're out on the town.
Losers.
It's very SOSXish.
Relationship cool kids. Yeah.
Yeah,
There you go.
100%.
Yeah, we definitely do that.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah.
That's
interesting.
hilarious.
What's with people not do? Yeah, and I mean, whatever. We have 2 in there, but I have always kind of been confused by people that don't do that.
Mhm.
Joseph does it with 3-2.
It might be just also
Like-
because you guys are both social in zone 2 as well. That's so that combination of
Oh,
like you guys are
okay.
Yeah, you're
Oh,
out there
that's
in
interesting.
two
Right.
different ways.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, yeah, that's interesting.
Look at your cat.
I know.
Oh, that's awesome.
This is such a little dumbass.
He's been like extra clingy lately.
I like how cats get clingy and they get close to you, but then they just turn their back on you.
Totally,
That's great. Much better than
Hmm.
dogs. But dogs just sitting there staring at you. Like, stop looking at me.
Yeah,
dogs need some,
Yeah,
Yeah.
cats will try to put their butthole right in your face. Yeah.
When I was looking at Self-Pres 3-1, I think an example of the way it can show up is people who get addicted to just all kinds of self-modification. It could veer into the self-mutilation thing, but it's a way to experience the renewal of zone 1 or sexual within your own body of just some people will say that, I don't feel good, but if I can just get a tattoo or if I can modify my body, it feels like everything's brand new.
One thing that's interesting about that is that word reptilian, is that they often go reptilian in how they modify themselves.
Yes. Right.
It's interesting.
And so self-pres in 3-1, it becomes like a fetish that's curled into itself that you are trying to experience renewal by like doing something that could veer on the side of like self-destruction. And so, yeah, I'd be curious about that. I haven't seen any self-pres 3-1 examples. I'm going to write that down. Because it does seem more provocative to see social in 3-1, like, because it is meant to sort of like put the underbelly in people's faces, but I would imagine like 3-1 in self-pres would be like someone who just stays at home and does drugs by themselves or something like that. Some kind of like transgressive lifestyle practices.
Yeah, some kind of self-edge thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, I was just scrolling on
Bitchy.
Instagram. There's a new just Instagram. There's a new sexual orientation that has come out.
Oh wow.
It is called abrosexuality.
What?
And ABRO sexual. I'm not, but abrosexual, which just means a person who experiences fluctuating orientations over time. And let's see. And now there's a bunch of top stories. The emerging sexual identity taking the internet by storm. There's this quote: "It took me 30 years to realize I'm abrosexual, and my friends have made cruel remarks."
This is not a joke. This is not like on the Onion.
No, this is not a joke.
Way to be a
it's
victim.
like it's a new thing. It's basically your sexual orientation is fluid instead of just saying it's fluid. Yes. So sometimes you're gay and sometimes you're straight and sometimes you're maybe, I don't know, the other ones.
Combo platter.
So, yeah. So David, that's for you. I know you would love that.
Thank you. Another thing for me.
Hey, bro.
Yeah. And this is the woman.
Oh wow, yeah.
That's her. So that makes sense, you know?
Well, I could help her. I could say homosexual.
David, no. Zone 1. David, Zone 1. That's not what you want.
That's not what you want, baby.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
I gotta get going.
All right, y'all.
Love you guys.
Okay.
And I'll talk to you soon.
Guys.
Talk to you later. Love you.
All right. Bye.